This is episode 29 of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm Jeff Kaiser. It is April 17th, 2022, Easter Sunday. Wow. Time is moving on quickly. Spring is here. It is warm. It is hot. It is gross. I can't wait for winter again. I'm sure I'm probably in the minority when I say that. But it is a great day because we have a guest here on the podcast who I'm really excited to have on with me this afternoon. You may know him from bands such as Radiobaghdad, Collapsing Lungs, Red State Riot. Pete Gross. Pete, how are you?
I am here and I'm alive, so that is good.
That is good. I'm glad to see that you are alive and you are good. How you been doing? I mean, you haven't stopped. You've been pretty active in music for a very long time. So what you been up to recently?
I'm as crazy as ever, but I haven't been able to play live in a couple of years now, so I'm losing my mind in a different way than my usual craziness. But hopefully one of my new projects will be hitting the stage very soon and I'll be able to let my maniac self loose again. But like everyone else, I'm just trying to stay sane in these insane times. So I'm here to be crazy with you people.
Well, it's great to have you on. A lot we're going to be getting into today for this interview. And this is the first podcast you've done, is that right?
No one's ever interviewed me before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Never had the balls before. I am the most dangerous man in South Florida music history. The only others, the three members of Load, God rest their souls, have already passed. And Danny from AAA, more dangerous than me. But besides those, I'm the most dangerous man in South Florida rock and roll.
Well, I am very humbled to have you on as the first one to interview you. I know we're going to get into a lot of really great stories and history and all the things you've been doing all these years. So before we started doing the interview, you've informed me that you are now living outside of Atlanta. So how did you wind up getting to Georgia?
Well, I'm in hiding, so I can't say much about it. There's a lot of agencies and corporations that are after me. So I had to get out of my hometown, South Florida, escape to the woods of Georgia. I'm off the beaten path. No one knows where I am. We're going to keep it that way for as long as we can.
Understandable. Well, you're still in the hot weather, so you didn't escape that because it's still warm there, right? I mean, you might get some snow here and there. Too. Ah, nice.
I'm in the mountains. We do get I'm up here in the woods and the mountains, and we're well insulated up here. And yeah, and it's nice up here in Georgia. Yeah.
Talk about the background a little bit, because it looks like that was that done by yourself or is that done by someone that you know? I do like it. Little banner back there.
Well, the background back there was actually sprayed for me at the Fort Lauderdale swap shop on Sunrise Boulevard that everybody knows, the wonderful flea market there that I'm sure everybody in South Florida has been to and has a good laugh about. I have a good friend there that did that for me when I had a rap project. You know, you move to Atlanta, you have to do some rapping. So that's what I did.
Okay.
I had ulterior motives for that. And back there, that's from Bali. It's supposed to be bad luck, but for me, it's good luck. And my good friend Liam, who went to Bali and got it for me.
Nice. You mentioned the swap shop, and I can't forget the commercial. Where are the bargains? At the swap shop.
Yeah. Where are the bargains? That place is an incredible journey of humanity every time you go there, if you can survive the heat.
What was the first time you remember going to the swap shop? It's been there for so long.
Oh man, we used to go to the swap shop in the early 80s to get like hip hop and rap tapes before like hip hop was even a thing. I mean, in the early 80s, you can go to the Oakland Park flea market and buy his cassette tapes, and it would just be like a DJ playing these hard beats and just kids screaming. I don't know. The beats of the music would just stop, and you just hear like kids arguing with each other. I don't know what it was, but the beats would start again. It was the most raw, insane form of hip hop before hip hop was even a thing in the early 80s. And we were going there to buy 15-inch speakers to put in the back of our car, and to buy these raw rap tapes because you couldn't get them, in Tamarack or Carl Springs where I was. So
Right.
that was my first memory going there. It was actually to get into the hip hop scene. Put 15s in our car and we'd be booming, and at the time people would be looking at us like we're insane. Rap wasn't even really a thing yet then. It was just like you had Beastie Boys and you had Run DMC and you had these kids in the hood just making this insane rap music on cassette tapes that we would go buy there. So that's why we were traveling over there.
Nice.
And by swords. Swords, a lot of swords.
Yeah, I remember they had all kinds of interesting things like that you could buy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You get your swords, you get your rap tapes. It's good stuff.
What were some of the local hip hop groups you remember listening to in that time? Because, there was definitely a big boom of Miami bass music going on in the late 80s, early 90s. Were you into any of that stuff as it was kind of starting to rise?
Oh, yeah, I love Two Live Crew, and when Trick Daddy came in, and just everything but like I said, the first hip hop was not even like anybody famous or anybody that you would remember, because they were just these kids making these tapes, DJs. But yeah, when Luke Skywalker came out and the Miami bass came out, I just loved all of it, and very big influence on me. And you cross it over with the rock, and it was just great. If you were from South Florida and you weren't into like street hip hop music and Luke Skywalker, you didn't have a pulse. I mean, how did you not like that?
Right.
I remember going to the baseball stadium and seeing Two Live Crew and Ice-T and EPMD and Public Enemy one day, and the show was amazing. And and that's when it all started down there. Incredible stuff.
Did you grow up? Did you kind of have your early upbringing in the Broward area, Tamarack, Coral Springs? You kind of mentioned those two cities. So is that kind of where you grew up?
Yeah, my stomping ground was Tamarack, Coral Springs, Fort Lauderdale. And then, of course, we would travel down to the Miami Beach for the Cameo Theater, or to Hollywood to the Cell, or even go party up in Palm Beach with the Palm Beach Punks. But yeah, I was Fort Lauderdale, Tamarack and Coral Springs, Margate, Nola was my hoods.
Nice. Now, those areas aren't typically known for music. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there were bands from those areas, but it wasn't like Miami or, even going further to like Jacksonville and those type cities that had different scenes going on. So how did you kind of get involved? Were there other kids that you were kind of going to school with that you kind of linked up with? Like, how did you start to even just get into music?
Oh, yeah. In Tamarack and Coral Springs, it was very easy to find other people that shared musical interests. There was a lot of musicians and kids that were into punk and metal in its early stages back then. And, my first two that I found right there at JP Terravella my freshman year, was Brian from Collapsing Lungs and Chris Spikey from Collapsing Lungs and Radiobaghdad. We just instantly became friends. And, first year of high school, 14, 15 years old, we were already all in Tamarack in the same neighborhood. So we formed a band, and we were, immediately going up to Palm Beach and playing shows all over the place. There were kids in Coral Springs that were just playing music, and Boogalard came up, and my friend John Summerlade in Panic, he was a huge influence on me. In the fifth grade, I went over to his house for his birthday party, and he's playing Whitesnake on the drums. And I was just like, John, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And that was it. That was the turning point of my life right there. I said, this is going to be what I do for the rest of my life. He played one riff of Whitesnake on the drums in the fifth grade for me in his bedroom. I was like, it's over. Nothing else matters.
Was that some of the stuff that you kind of grew up really listening to, more of like heavy metal, hair metal, that type stuff, or were you into
everything?
Yeah,
I liked it all. When the Black Flag and the Dead Kennedys came out when I was 11 years old, I started listening. I was in the Ramones when I was 10 years old, when I started Rock and Roll High School, when that movie came out. And I saw that movie again. It was over. At that point, I was a punk for life. You're 10 years old and you're watching the movie Rock and Roll High School, and you see Riff Randall worshiping Joey Ramone. How could you not want to do that for the rest of your life? Anything else is lame. So 10 years old, I was a punk, a metalhead. I was into Kiss. I was into everything. If it was music, I was listening.
Did you have any siblings growing up who helped to influence you too?
No. Only child, lone wolf. So I had to find other bandmates. I had a couple of great cousins. I have a lot of great cousins, and some of them are definitely into music like me and wild like me. But as an only child, you have to find other bandmates and friends quickly when
Right.
you do that.
Yeah. What about your parents? What were they listening to at that time?
My mom was like into the Beatles and the 60s rock and roll. I remember she had like Black Sabbath record and Elvis Presley records, and I would just listen to them all. I listened to every Elvis Presley song on every record, memorize it all, and then move on to Black Sabbath. And then my dad was playing classical music the whole time. So I had Beethoven and Bach, and I would just be dancing around the house to Beethoven and Bach and doing ballet and stuff. And so I got the classical influence. And because of all that, I'm an endless riff master now. I can't not pick up the guitar and play a guitar riff because I have so many influences. I'll be writing songs till the day I die.
Where did you first pick up guitar? What made you kind of gravitate to that instrument as your music?
Well, after I saw Rock and Roll High School, I knew I had to be, Johnny Ramone or Dee Dee Ramone. So before my bar mitzvah, my 13th, when you're 13, you get bar mitzvah, a member of the tribe. So I took that money and bought my first guitar, and that was it, off and running. Took one guitar lesson, and then I got the Metal Method guitar lessons from the back of some magazine, Cream magazine maybe or something. They had the order of Metal Method guitar lessons. There was no internet back then. There was no YouTube to learn how to play every song, which I do now. But so back then you had to order from the back of the catalog, and then you get a cassette tape, and then there's this printed pages and a cassette tape to go with it of how to play metal and shred. And then I just took that and I learned to play every Iron Maiden song on bass and guitar, and I was off and running.
Wow. Nice. What was your favorite song to play at that time?
The Trooper on bass guitar, definitely. And Fly to Icarus. When I was able to master those long songs on bass with all the different parts, I knew I was on my way at that point.
What was the first band you remember kind of forming or playing in your early formative years?
Oh, well, that was with Chris Kolbach and Brian Tatunik from Collapsing Lungs. We were, like I said, freshman in high school. Our first band was like called Distant Anger or something, or I don't even know what it's called. We played our first show was at this club Soda in Margate, this big, huge like dance hall that they turned punk on some nights, and there was we had like 200 kids there that first night, all our friends. We invited all the freaks and geeks. My thing was to gather them all. If you were an outsider, a freak, or a geek, you're going to join the punk community, and you were going to join us, and we were going to take over in numbers. And that's exactly what we did. And by the time I was 14, Spikey was like 13. Brian's like 16, driving us around in his mom's station wagon. And we're going up and playing shows up in Becker Road and Jupiter and Fort Pierce in the middle of nowhere, where the punks would go in the middle of nowhere. And abandoned movie theater, and had a generator, and you plug into a generator, and there's like 500 punks in the middle there, and we're playing these shows, and the cops come and raid it, and then they know where to go, and everybody follows to this beach pavilion. You plug in this beach pavilion, and all of a sudden you got a beach punk concert going on, and this is like we're 15 years old playing these shows, and everybody's moshing, and I'm just like, yeah, this is the life right here. This is it.
How old were you at that time?
I guess played our first show as 15 probably. Spike was probably 14. Brian was probably 16, and Brian would drive us in the station wagon. It was hilarious what we were doing. We were putting on concerts when we were 15, 16 years old. We had BGK, my other band. I played at Nuclear Beer with John Kennedy. Me and Spike Leighton View, we opened for his band BGK from Holland. We had come, 15 years old, we're putting on this concert. We paid them like $1,000. We made like $2,000 at the door selling tickets for like $4. The Tamarack Rec Hall. This stuff was crazy. I had a skateboard to a concert I was promoting. Me and Chris Spikey were skateboarding to this show at a local rec hall that we're putting on when we're 15 years old. And it's just like huge punk rock crazy success. And it's just like we were off and running at a very young age, very DIY, very young, networking and doing it.
Do you remember at that time other local bands you were gigging with?
Oh yeah, we had Nuclear Beer was a big band down there, and the other big local bands on the scene were like Amazing Grace and the Drills, and oh boy, and bands from Gainesville were even coming down, like Psychic Violence and the Doldrums. There was a good little mix of bands back then that that were already started at a very young age that were doing it.
At what point because that was kind of pre-Collapsing Lungs, because you did Radiobaghdad first, right? Before Collapsing Lungs actually formed. Is that right?
No, well, actually, me and Chris and Brian were playing together, in our first band ever. And then I think Spike and I formed like a more heavy hardcore band with our friend Clint. And then after that, I went away to college and for a year and decided that was just interrupting, my life goal. And when I came back from college, Spike was jamming with some kids from Carl Springs, and Brian wanted to start a new band, Collapsing Lungs. And so Brian and I started Collapsing Lungs, his band. He started it with me, and Spike and his, band Face Value, with Chris Hawkins and Pete Gordon and Lester Norris and Scott Norman, that we were playing at same warehouse. And Collapsing Lungs started coming up. Face Value started coming up. They turned into Radiobaghdad. We were both coming up together at the same time. And oddly enough, there was a lot of tension between Spike, and Spike joined Collapsing Lungs. And there was a little bit of tension because Collapsing Lungs wanted Spike all for ourselves, and they didn't want him to be with Radiobaghdad a little bit, not too much. And I ended up joining Radiobaghdad, almost like, I love these guys, it's my brother, we're all gonna make music, it's all gonna be fun. So we had Radiobaghdad and Collapsing Lungs going at the same time, actually. So that's kind of how that went.
Okay. And did you kind of feel that was helping feed your creativity, being in two bands that sounded pretty different?
Yeah. I mean, we were sharing warehouses, sharing drummers, so it was very easy to do and convenient. And it was just driving the competition, the always playing together. Spike and I have like a psychic connection because we played so much together in so many bands, so many types of music, and it's like we're an automatic pilot when we jam together. So yeah, it definitely helped. I think, but ultimately,
What other bands you remember kind of sharing warehouses with, or maybe just who were playing in the same warehouse strip as some of the bands you were playing in at that time?
Well, probably one of the best warehouse experiences, we had multiple ones, was Atlantic Boulevard and Dixie Highway in Pompano Beach. When Collapsing Lungs was really coming into our own right before we got signed. We had a warehouse there. It was Radiobaghdad, it was Load, it was Jack Up Jill, it was Marilyn Manson. We were all in there together at two warehouses, and we were all practicing and all, competing, all wanted to be the best, all wanted to make it. Don't let anyone tell you different. It was very competitive, but a lot of love and just camaraderie too, because we all felt like we're fueling each other. We are all fueling the South Florida scene together. We're all very important, and there's a lot of love between the bands, a lot of competition, but a lot of love.
Was this
crazy?
I'm sure. Was this before or after Brian Tututnik was the bass player for Marilyn Manson?
He was in Marilyn Manson before Collapsing Lungs. That was sort of like while I was away at school, came back, he had the warehouse on Blount Road in Pompano, that Collapsing Lungs, and everybody shared, even Panic and Boogaloo, I think, were there as well in another warehouse. So he had Marilyn Manson first, and then when he left Marilyn Manson, that's when he formed Collapsing Lungs with me. So, and then we're still sharing warehouses and competing, and still all friends, even though things like that were going down. Little riff-raffs here and there between members. But, yeah.
What was some of the most memorable moments from that time in the warehouse period?
Some of the shows were really wild. I remember a show we played with Load at the club in Davie that just escapes my mind with the name of it at the moment. And there was pretty much a riot there, and everybody was fighting, and some guy had Jeff like bear hugged on stage, and I had to jump on that guy, and pool cues were getting thrown and things were getting hit. I mean, there were some shows that were crazy, and like the Collapsing Lung shows, they got really wild. People were just trying to be as wasted and crazy as they could, jumping on stage, and girls doing nutsy stuff, and just doing a lot of, you know, drugs, hallucinogenics, smoking a lot of weed, stuff like that, just added fuel to the fire and just made the experiences just really crazy, especially when you're doing it with other band members, you know, in other bands, and you're sharing the night on stages together. It's just like, it becomes an incredible experience, you know, that it's hard to describe and share unless you were there doing it together, but it makes for a real camaraderie time and everything.
What do you remember about the first show you played with Radiobaghdad?
Whew. First show I played with Radiobaghdad was probably at this club in Dania Beach off like Dixie Highway, the Treehouse, I believe it was called. And I remember Chris Hawkins was only like 13 years old. He was so young and he was already so good. It was like so fun to play with them. But that was my first show coming back and playing after I'd been to college. So I felt a little weird and disconnected from the other guys in the band, but it was still good. I just remember, you know, how good Chris Hawkins was at such a young age. You know, you just knew this kid was going to be a shredder.
Very nice. So from that show, you all were, I think, out of all the bands you had been with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Radiobaghdad had the most output in terms of discography. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Because we put out 3 albums, you know, 7-inch and 3 albums, 2 with Friendly Cow Records in Germany, and then with One Foot Records, an American label. So we definitely had the most output. And, you know, we did, you know, 1 US tour and 3 European tours. So we definitely hit the most people, you know, the most people got to see us overall, I would say. Whereas Collapsing Lungs, we just had the 1 EP on Atlantic Records and a whole lot of like demo tapes, and we only did 1 US tour. So I would say the more output was done with Radiobaghdad over the years.
What was it like recording with Bill Stevenson from the Descendants?
That was incredible. I mean, that was when the internet was in its first infancy, and there was a punk group chat, a very like dinosaur group chat, is very texty and, you know, archaic looking. And Bill Stevenson was in this. I'm like, you're not Bill Stevenson, the greatest drummer next to Dave Lombardo of all time. This can't be. He's like, yes, I am, sir. I was like, dude, I'm like, I love you. I've seen you in concert with the Descendants, with Black Flag. I have every record you've ever been on. You're like my hero. You're the best drummer on the planet. My gosh, I was just going crazy over him. I was speaking to him. I'm like, I have a band. You know, my drummer Rips. He sounds like you. You're his biggest influence and everything. We have, you know, we've toured. You know, we're going on tour. We do stuff. He's like, let me hear it. So I sent him. I don't remember what I sent him, but something. And then he wrote back like a week later or something. I'll record you guys. Come out here and I'll record you guys. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, come to my studio, blasting room. I love recording. How much money can you guys get up to record your next album? And I was just like, I'm like, guys, you're not going to believe this, but Bill Stevenson and Stephen Egerton want to record our record if we can get up $5,000 freaking dollars. And so that's how that went down. Completely lucky. Nice. He flew out there. We got the money from the record label, One Foot, this nice guy who ran it, and it was incredible. You know, Bill Stevenson tracked it with us, and he was just, the moment we met him, he just started doing incredibly silly, funny things to put us at ease. You know, it was like fart jokes or like coffee jokes, or just like, listen to this band over. They're the fastest band on the planet. And he starts playing it. He's like, wah! And he's like drooling. He's going nuts. And we're just like, this guy is crazy in a great way.
Yeah.
And so he was very funny and just the nicest, sweetest guy ever. And he tracked all the music for us. And then Stephen Egerton mixed it, but we never saw him. He was like the mystery mystery man.
Okay.
Mixes. You don't disturb him, leave him. We met him very briefly, but again, super nice, just a very brief meeting. But we got to hang out in the blasting room and see their secrets and how they do things, make their own t-shirts, and they just run that whole operation out of there DIY style, and it's just incredible. It just taught me so much about how to do everything. And yeah, but sometimes it was grilling, because when we were playing, it had to be like perfect. If their name was going to be on it, it had to be perfect. So they were like, "You're going to play it again. You're going to play again." They were grilling Spike. I mean, like Spike was like perfection in drums to us. And Bill was like, "You got to hit that snare the same every time, like that." And it was just like, wow. But they got an incredible performance out of us, and the record is great. And we actually still hear from them and from other people today that say that it's still a classic record.
Absolutely.
So yeah, classic experience. Amazing.
Radiobaghdad is one of those bands you just wish everyone appreciated who listened to punk, because just such a great band, and so many I don't know a bad Radiobaghdad song. Honestly.
Yeah,
I like them all.
And because we were all writing songs. Everybody in that band was contributing to the songwriting. And again, it was competition. Everybody wanted their song to be the shredness, to be the best, to make the record. And it just fueled everything. Spike plays every instrument, so he just writes his songs one way. Chris Hawkins, just a complete shredder, who's so young that he just could write a song from nowhere. When it comes to songwriting, I'm a musical prodigy. What can I say? And Les Norris can also play guitar and write songs, and the lyricist. So it's like we're all coming at it, and Pete Gordon too, all contributing. And again, so it was all competition and pushing it, and and we played together so often. We were practicing so many nights together that and just living together like a family. So
right.
How could you not get to be good?
Right. And Les was the first guest of the Florida Sound Archive podcast back in January of 2020, before we knew what COVID even was. He was the first guest on the podcast. How did you meet Les?
I've known Les since the 4th grade or 5th grade.
Wow.
I met him in the lunchroom of Tamarack Elementary in like 4th or 5th grade. So we weren't close friends at that young, but then of course, we became, like brothers later in the band. But I've known him since 5th grade. If you're from Tamarack, everybody knew each other. We all went to Tamarack Elementary. Carl Springs hated us and wanted to keep us out of their school. So we were just our little, they were the socias, we were the greasers. We had to stick together. So you had, Chris Kolbach and Brian and Lester and me and the whole crew in Tamarack. And so we had known each other since elementary school. Yeah.
I had lived in Tamarack very, very briefly myself, off Commercial. Do you remember where the Steak and Ale was on the corner of?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lived right across the street from there, and but I went to Pinewood Elementary School when I was younger, so that was in North Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Lapsing Lungs was half North Lauderdale, and half my friends are from North Lauderdale. North Lauderdale and Tamarack. North Lauderdale and Tamarack were like the greasers that stuck together to like, and Margate too. It was like, we're the poor kids. We're gonna go fight those Carl Springs rich kids, even though we're all friends with them. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
But who else lived right by there? The Scorpions actually lived in that neighborhood back there. The Scorpions lived back there.
Really?
That's right. Members of the band Scorpions lived back in that neighborhood back where you're talking about. Yes, they did.
Interesting.
True story. Yes, they did.
Who knew? I didn't know that. That's a good fest.
Nice. Klaus Mine was hanging out back there going to Steak and Ale.
Okay. Nice. You mentioned a little earlier about a club in Davie, and the name was kind of escaping you. Was that the Plus Five?
No.
Okay.
Just the Club Q. Club Q it was called.
Oh, Club Q. Okay. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's where that little load riot happened. Yeah. Plus Five had some great shows there with Load and everybody, and oh my gosh. And yeah, that's where we got signed to Atlantic Records. Collapsing Lungs, the president or vice president, or he was at Atlantic Records, came to see us at Plus Five. He was watching us. We saw him watching us from the back of the room. We knew what was going down. We started playing the song Head Crack. It has this long intro, and then it all comes in. Everybody starts moshing, the place erupts, and he just walked out. And I was like, I knew it was good. I'm like, we got it. He had seen enough. I'm like, I know when he walked out of that club at that moment, he wasn't walking out because he wasn't impressed. He was walking out because he was going to get the contracts ready.
Was
so
that
+5 good memories for me?
Was that at the Slammy Awards? When that happened?
I don't think that was at the Slammy Awards. I think this was one show after that.
Okay.
The Slammy Awards I remember because my girlfriend at the time punched me in the face because a girl I had cheated on her with was standing next to her. They're both watching me play, and I knew this was going to end badly, and it did. I deserve that. Sorry, Rachel. My bad.
It's funny how those stories you always never forget, unfortunately. Right. Yeah. So, the whole deal that came with Atlantic, because Collapsing Lungs was way ahead of a lot of the bands that kind of came after with the whole rock metal. Granted, there was some experimentation back in the day. We know the whole Anthrax, Public Enemy situation, Run DMC, Aerosmith, but the whole rap metal hadn't really peaked at that point. And Collapsing Lungs is one of the first ones as far as I'm aware. So what was that like for Collapsing Lungs, for you at that time, and then kind of seeing a lot of these other bands kind of pop up and maybe get more well-known and popular as that genre kind of grew?
Yeah, we also had like industrial elements too. We had 7 people in the band, so it's so many different elements and instruments going off that incorporated so much that it was hard to pin down exactly what we were doing. But it was easy for me. It was all coming natural. Again, I've been to rap and metal for so long, grew up on it, that it was just like second nature to combine the two. It was just like, this is a no-brainer. This is how you do it. And again, for Brian, Brian listens to so much different music. I mean, that guy is like an encyclopedia of music in his head. He can channel any kind of vocalization or any kind of vocalist or genre he wants to in his head, and boom, it's going to come out. So it was easy for us to do. And I knew there was going to be like hundreds of bands that were going to do this. Of course, I wasn't the only one to rock and rap. I knew it was coming. I knew there were bands that would be better. But the fact is, if we would have stuck together, we would have been bigger than all of them. We'd be in stadiums right now. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that we would have been a stadium big. I mean, That's what the president of Atlantic Records told us. They were going to make us international superstars, not just another band. So, and plus we had all the positive political messages, that are still needed today out there. And that's really, I love that the most about it, was the positivity of the politicalness of what Brian always had to say. I never had to worry about what he was going to say.
How much influence did Atlantic Records have on the direction of the music of Collapsing Lungs?
None. Zero. All they did was made the record cover. They had their designer design the EP record cover, but they just gave us money, said, go into the studio and we'll see what comes out. And then what came out, they put out. So they were just like, we could have done anything and they would have gone along with it probably, unless it was indecent, of course. But,
right.
They were, I can't sit here and say, oh, Atlantic Records was terrible. They did this or that. No, they just said, here, do what you do. So they were great.
And Collapsing Lungs put out that, it's almost like an EP, right? I mean, I don't think it's a full length, an EP. So was there ever intentions to do a full length, or did that kind of get sidetracked with all the things going on in the band?
No, there was supposed to be EP. There was supposed to be 3 full lengths, I think, or something. I mean, it was, but it didn't happen because at the end of the first grueling tour, Brian and I got into a stupid fight. My bad, my fault. I take full responsibility. And worst decision, worst mistake anybody on this planet's ever made, perhaps. So there you go.
That first tour that Collapsing Lungs had that you said was grueling, what were some of the places that you were at on that tour, and any good memories of places that you got a chance to play for the first time?
Oh yeah, of course. It was still a great tour. Half the shows were really awesome and great, playing great venues. We played Milwaukee Metal Fest, the same night as like Slayer and Malevolent Creation. There was like thousands of people there. We played this club in Chicago that was like really gangster, and we thought we were going to get our butts kicked at that show, but they ended up, really liking us and everything. And yeah, it was the tour itself, the shows were great, but the situation, the how we were traveling in this like RV thing we got that kept breaking down, leaving us on the side of the road and no money and being super poor back then. It just all came to a head one day, the second to last day of the tour. But yeah, the tour was still great. I mean, but to be 100% honest, the record label should not probably have put us on that tour. They probably should have put us opening for somebody big already established. It would have been a much safer, controlled environment. But I understand from their perspective, it was hard to match us up at the time with another band. And because you could see at the same time we were doing our own tour, like our own little headline tour, opening here and there, these hodgepodge of shows, Marilyn Manson at the same exact time was touring with Soundgarden and Nine Inch Nails. And we would, everywhere we went, we would hear the radio of them opening for the show and see the posters opening for that show. And they were in this insulated, controlled environment. And it was just a sure shot stepping stone to the next thing, where we were kind of left to our own device as this new band out there doing it on our own. And so, yeah, I would say was the only misstep, and it was a huge one.
Yeah. What was the, out of all the, because one of the bands you mentioned was Malevolent Creation, who was also a Florida band. Were there any other Florida bands you had a chance to kind of connect with on the road as you were doing some of these tours?
We used to play a lot of out of town shows locally from South Florida. When we did our tours with Radiobaghdad and Collapsing Lungs, there was no other South Florida bands that went with us at the time. But being from South Florida, it was such a problem to tour or play out of town shows in the first place because you're so far down, miles away. It takes a whole day just to get out. Where if you're from Atlanta, or New York, you can play 15 major cities all within like a 2-hour range of yourself. But from South Florida, you're driving a full day just to get to your next major city, or at least, like 3 or 4 hours to play an Orlando show. So we used to play out of town shows, go up to Tampa and Orlando. Those are the only 2 places you could really get to from South Florida. We used to go out of town with bands like Marilyn Manson and Jack Off Jill and Load, and play out of town shows up there with them. And those were always fun road trips because sometimes we would get hotels and just party all night. And, we're in another city running around together, and getting drunk and, being stupid and all that stuff. So I have more memories of connecting with other local bands at the time, playing local shows and going to out of town to local shows. Those were always fun. And to see how, our bands from South Florida would do in Orlando and Tampa compared to our home crowd was always interesting as well.
What were some of the reactions you got from some of the people who were attending some of those shows?
It was definitely a lot different than in South Florida, where people just knew us and knew our songs and would just go crazy when we would play. It was more of a controlled craziness. And the crowds, you could tell they were getting into it. And there was a few people that were really getting into it and going nuts because they could see what was happening. But whenever you're watching a new band or a band doing something for the first time, it's hard to like really go off like to a band that you're into at the time and already going nuts for. So, but we always did pretty well. Our first show out of state that I ever played was with Collapsing Lungs at the Masquerade in Atlanta. We played in Heaven, the big room, and there was a lot of people there. I don't remember if Testament was playing that night or somebody big was playing that night with us. And there was a lot of people. And when we took the stage, I was like, okay, this is our first out of state show. This is Atlanta, Georgia. These people are totally foreign to us. We are totally foreign to them. This is going to be a test. But we did very well, and Atlanta liked us. And at that point, I know, okay, we can take on anywhere. And at that point, when we got to New York, we were ready to smash people.
Isn't that where you recorded the EP?
Yeah, the Collapsing Lungs EP was recorded in New York. I think it was called Wang Chung Studios. It was a famous studio. Beastie Boys been there. When we were recording, LL Cool J walked into our studio. And we had our drum beat going that Kyle Embryo said he had created himself. That's right, I'm outing you, Embryo, right now. And LL Cool J walked and said, "Oh, I know that beat. That beat is blah, blah, blah." And we all looked at Embryo like, "Embryo, what's going on, dude? You said that's your beat, man." So LL Cool J busted him, but he was super cool. Yeah, that was in New York. We were supposed to play CBGBs that week, but I slipped on ice and broke my wrist, and we couldn't play CBGB because of that. So that was, but yeah, we recorded in New York and it was very fun, very cool.
And you being a big, punk guy and a lot of bands you were into also maybe from New York too. So was that one of your biggest regrets, not getting a chance to play CBs?
Oh no, I got to play CBGB.
Oh, you got to
played
play
CBGB later with Red State Riot. So I had my revenge and I played CBGBs.
There you go.
But at the time, yeah, you bet at the time, yeah, it was pretty devastating. But we also did Collapsing Lungs, got to play the Limelight and my father's place in Stone Pony in New York. So all those clubs are still legendary, and we got to play all those clubs in New York. And so that was still, that was great too.
And kind of going back to South Florida for a minute, just speaking about some of the legendary clubs, some other venues I know you had played at that were quite known in their time was clubs like Squeeze and clubs like the Reunion Room. What do you remember from what do you remember from shows and both performing and maybe even seeing bands at that time at those venues?
Well, before I even played at those places, I played at the Cameo Theater in Miami Beach with Nuclear Beer. We opened up for Government Issue, and what an experience that was, because the Cameo Theater stage was so big and the club was so big, and the PA was so huge, and I'm like 16 years old and I'm up there opening for Government Issue, or like one of my favorite bands from DC, and we're rocking out, we're throwing skateboards to the crowd and they're going nuts and everything, and so playing the Cameo Theater was probably the best experience, the best place to play in South Florida. But Squeeze and Reunion Room, definitely two of my favorite places, dear to my heart all the time. Squeeze, I used to go crazy. The Reunion Room, Tim from the Union was great, and drinking, well, no, I can't say I was drinking before 21 because that would be illegal. But things, a lot of fun was going on. Rachel from Skid Row, I think, was at one of our shows. I remember smoking in my car with him, and that was pretty cool. And yeah, just very young and just, tearing it up and filling these small clubs up already with all our friends and other people that were coming onto the scene. Very special, very cool.
Who was one of your personal favorite local bands to catch back then?
Load was always, my favorite band. Whenever we would see Low at the +5, or we would see them all over town, at Churchill's and Miami, another place that I love playing and love going to. Always a crazy time down there. Every Load show was insane. Jack Up Jill shows were always fun because we were friends with them. We were always rooting them on. The Holy Terrors, I love seeing them, and Rob, and they were always so great. And there were a lot of, and Boogalard, with Jordy, Twiggy from Manson, another good friend of mine from high school. Terraville, I love him, so happy that he made it, with Manson, because, he had it tough, Jordy, as a youngster. And so it was great to see him make it. My friend, like I said, my friend John Summerlin in Panic, watching his early band play was incredible. Robbie Jeanette Band, we were friends with them, and they were really good. And oh boy, there's so many bands down there. Violent Playground, another metal band that was down there that just shredded, and we were just watching, be like, oh my gosh, these guys are so good. They rock. And as I go on, I remember others, but my memory's a little cloudy.
You mentioned Holy Terrors and Rob Alba. I just had Rob Alba on the podcast not that long ago. Any good Rob Alba stories you can share?
I just have nothing but admiration for him. He's just always one of the smartest guys in the scene, and just the guy with the best advice in the scene. And and when he told Sam, go to New York, do it. You got this. If you go to New York and make it, and then Sam goes and is in Interpol, and it's just like international superstar now. I mean, who else would do that? Who else would tell your band member, dude, you've got to make it, man. You're bigger than this. You got to go. And then they do, and they make it. I mean, that's genius. I mean, that's life. That's life skills right there. So if you ever need life advice, go to that guy right there. And the energy in his shows, incredible. And the Whale and a Telecaster like that. Not many people be playing the Telecaster, and I just love watching him and Dan, and they were just a great band to watch live. I was really always into them. And yeah, so them and Load were definitely, my two favorite bands, back then. I would have to say on the scene that I would go see anywhere, anytime that I could.
Yeah. Yeah. You had mentioned, obviously there's been folks that have passed over the years, some Load, Dan from Holy Terrors. Was there anyone's death that you felt like just hit you the hardest? Anyone that you kind of comes to mind that just was just really hard on you?
Yeah. Yeah. When Jeff Tucci passed, I loved him so much. I always wanted to be in a band with him. And when he passed, when Spike, texted me that day, I was just like, I'm out of here. I'm out of South Florida. It's too toxic for me at this point. I was married to my wonderful wife at that time, and I was like, look, we got to get out of here. This is too toxic for me down here at this point. I want to try something in another city. As much as I love South Florida, this is like a push to get me out of here. So it was like a shock to my system, and that was it. And we left South Florida, my wife and I.
So that,
so definitely that. I mean, I watched Bobby die in the hospital. I went and visited him, and when he was like there, I can't, so I visited him in the hospital and watched it happen. Went to his funeral and all that, of course, and it was shocking. It made death real to me so much more at the time. It just motivated me more. Not that I need more motivation. And then when Jeff went, then that was just it for me. I had to go.
Yeah. And it was around that time when you did make the move outside of South Florida?
Yeah, that day I decided I was gone. I was going to do it. I told my whole family. I told all my friends. I'm like, I'm moving. I'm like, my mom had already moved to Asheville, North Carolina. So I was like, I'm moving, somewhere up there. And so I'm going to start anew up there. Of course, I keep in touch with everybody down here.
Sure.
In a band with Lester again right now.
Right.
But yeah, for me, that was it. And then within a couple of years after that, it only took a couple of years after that, we were gone. We were up here in Georgia at that point. I wanted to move near Atlanta so I could go to the Masquerade. I was tired of missing concerts and tours. As anyone who lives in South Florida knows, many tours miss South Florida because it's so hard to get down there. You got to drive all those hours down there and all those hours out, and it's hot. And if you get broke down, you're dead for the tour. So we missed so many tours, and I was just tired of seeing every single tour. Look, I'm a music junkie. When a band announces a tour, I look at every date, every club they're playing, who's opening up. I study everything that every band does music everywhere. And I noticed that every band plays the Masquerade in Atlanta. Every tour goes to Atlanta and the Masquerade. I said, I am sick of missing shows in South Florida. We're moving outside Atlanta so I can go to Atlanta shows and see every tour. And that's what I did.
That's what you did. Baby. What do you miss most? What do you miss most about South Florida?
Oh, all my friends, Studio 13 with Jeremy Staska, where all these bands recorded, where Load recorded. I mean, Jack Off Jill, M. Bougalard, Malevolent Creation, Collapsing Lungs, Marilyn Manson, Radiobaghdad. If you were a band, you recorded with Jeremy Staska at Studio 13. And I loved going there. I love him. I'm still using him, recording with him right now. And, long distance wise. And definitely, all the wonderful friends in South Florida and the great scene down there. It's a great scene in South Florida. You can't deny it. We had the heaviest mosh pits on the East Coast, in South Florida, and we were like in a little bubble down there. So we had to be a tight knit community. So I still keep in touch with everybody. Love everybody down there. I hate the heat. That was another thing. Endless summer.
Right.
No, endless summer. I'm done with.
I hear you on that. Jeremy Staska, you mentioned, and again, a who's who of South Florida bands, musicians recorded with him. Was there anyone at that time who maybe you had never met before, you got a chance to kind of run into at those times and you were doing some recordings with him?
Yeah, definitely. That's where I met like the Phil from Malevolent Creation, and for me, he was like, Malevolent Creation wasn't like a local band. That was like a national like death metal band. So like when he's there hanging out, I was just like, whoa, this is pretty cool, meeting other people here and everything. And yeah, I know I met like all his band members. I became from Sinful Lust, like Ross and Jared and his brother, Jeremy's brother. I became friends with all of them too through that, and that was great too because all those guys are great. And we used to play shows with them and have fun with them. Adam Dearborn, yeah. So yeah, I met a lot of great people through Jeremy, and I introduced him to a lot of people that he still works with and is friends today. So I'd have to say Jeremy and I networked through each other quite a lot.
Any other studios you remember recording at that time?
Yeah, we recorded at some other studios down here, but not with like people that were in the scene like Rap Bastard or anybody, just some other, random studios. Actually, the first studio that me and Brian and Spike ever recorded at was with Spike's older brother, Paul. Paul had a recording studio in North Lauderdale, and we went there and recorded our first like 3-song demo tape with him, and it sounded amazing using the 2-inch reel and everything. I mean, we're just like 14, 15 years old, but this demo we recorded, it sounded really great. We knew, we had something. So Spike, Chris's older brother, Paul, is very instrumental because, I know he had Spike and Chris playing with him at a very early age. He had Spike playing like Journey songs and Ozzy songs with him, like when he was like 12 years old. So by the time, we got to Spike when he was 13, Paul had like already had him into being a trained musician. So yeah, we were in the studio at an insanely early age.
You were in the studio, just at that time, was there a certain song that may have just been like a cover that you like to kind of warm up to or just kind of mess around with that you would always kind of gravitate the most to?
We played only all originals. We just did originals. We were already writing originals. We wanted to do our own thing immediately, but there was one song that was, and no one's going to know this unless you're a total punk, Decry Falling. This band Decry from Southern California, and the song Falling. And like very obscure underground punk song, but we played it because me and Spike loved it. And the first time we played it live was at, like I told you earlier, we went up to Fort Pierce to the show where we plugged into a pavilion by the beach. And that was the first song. We opened up with that song, and all the punks started going nuts. All these kids that we didn't know from Fort Pierce started moshing and going crazy because they knew the song somehow. Well, because there's not many punk songs back then in '84 or whatever. And we were just like, oh yeah, we got this. We know we got this, because here we are like miles from home, from a crowd of nobody we know, and they're going insane for us. They're like, okay, we're cool. We're good. Say Decry Falling. Look it up.
Okay. I don't think I know that one, so I'll have to look that one up. Where were they from?
They're from LA. I got
LA.
the album. I can show you the album. Yeah, they're like from LA. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just
their drummer went on to being in a band Junkyard with Brian Baker from Minor Threat.
Minor Threat, right?
But they did have some touch to the bigger punk rock world.
Nice. I think
Spike's
also
gonna love it that I mentioned Decry Falling. He's gonna love that. Spike, I mentioned Decry. You love that.
And just kind of speaking of, you mentioned you may have the record nearby. Are you a collector yourself of vinyl, CDs, cassettes, that sort of thing?
Oh, you just hit a very sore spot in my soul, my friend. I had the sickest punk rock collection, and then I went up to Florida State. I was forced to go to college, like many of us are forced to do, and I had this incredible punk rock collection with me, and I couldn't get it home from Tallahassee one summer, and so my friend Jay took it to Jacksonville with him, and then I never heard from him again, can't find him. So I had like the greatest punk rock album collection of all time that I lost when I was like 17 or 18, and I was so devastated by this that like I have a lot of records and a lot of CDs, but I can't say that I'm a collector because I was so devastated by losing that I really never got back into it. It's just always been focused on writing music and bands, and collecting records and CDs, although I still have a huge collection, as you probably can imagine.
Yeah, that's a tough break, and it's hard to kind of get back in, I would imagine, after that kind of loss to your collection. So
yeah. Like the leather edition Motorhead record, owned by Anti-Scrunty Faction that you will like never find ever again. And just all these EPs and singles that are so rare and that are unfindable now. And devastating. I'm still going to go back to Jacksonville one day and just look at every single record store and thrift shop and see if I can find any.
When you were up in Tallahassee, when you were at FSU at that time, were you aware of any of the music scene going on in Tallahassee, some of the punk and and hardcore music that was up there?
No, there really wasn't any that I saw. I mean, I was going to shows up there. Like we saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Murphy's Law together. Me and my friend Susie O, we saw them and we actually partied with them afterwards. And John Frusciante was backstage, like feeling up my friend Susie, and she slapped him. And John was like, he was like, was it John Frusciante or was it Hillel, the guy that died? No, it was Frusciante, I think. I have to figure out which guitarist it was, but she slapped him. And he was like, what are you doing? She's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm doing a loving, beautiful thing to you. She's like, no, you're feeling me up. And if you do it again, I'm going to lay you out. So I thought that was like the funniest thing, that my friend Susie O punched Red Hot Chili Peppers guitarist in the face. And the night before, I was talking to Anthony and Flea, and I was looking at their tattoos, asking them about them, and they're like, last night in Pensacola, we did shrooms and we played 21 Hendrix songs in a row, and the crowd was like, what's going on? And I'm just like, this is so cool. So yeah, and then we like smoked some weed with Jimmy Gestapo and Todd Youth from Murphy's Law, and they were totally cool. And the Chili Peppers were totally cool. And and then the Flaming Lips. I saw the Flaming Lips at Florida State on campus for free at the, like where you eat the food, like where everybody eats the food at the little center on campus. The Flaming Lips played there, okay, for free. You understand how weird that is?
Yeah.
And this was like their first tour. And it's like this local band from Oklahoma, the Flaming Lips, are going to play on campus for free. And they had like their little TV sets, and like it was the trippiest thing. And I was on hallucinogens. Can I say that? I'm the most dangerous man in South Florida rock and roll city. And so let's just say it was crazy. Yeah. So Florida State, thank you very much for that experience. I appreciate that.
How much of that you think kind of went into your creativity? The fact that you may have been experimenting with, drugs and alcohol, maybe at that time, you think that kind of had a role in how that expanded your creativity?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it expanded my mind. So I know it expanded my creativity too. I mean, when you're listening to Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin and those kind of states, it's like okay, look, like Carrie Fisher said, the closest thing you can get to God is listening to Led Zeppelin on hallucinogenics. And I stand by that. Carrie Fisher is a genius, and that's true. But just to be clear, I've never been a heavy drug user. That's why I'm as old as I am, and I'm still rocking, because I've always paced myself, and I've never done hard drugs like cocaine or crack or heroin. I have never done that in my life. So as crazy as you see me on stage, and maybe people might think what they want about me, I have never done that stuff. I've only smoked weed and done mild hallucinogenics in my life, just so we can be clear. You got to pace yourself if you want to be partying at my age and rocking still like I am. But yeah, it definitely all expands your mind and helps expand your music and everything. But that's not really, I wouldn't say it's important to music at all. Music comes from within you and from all your past experiences and from your passion. Drugs is just a plaything. It definitely doesn't like really fuel my music or anything. And if I wouldn't have ever done drugs, I'd be playing music the same exact way, because I've been playing music this way before I ever smoked a joint in my life, and I'm still playing music the same way I was then. So
sometimes you hear stories from people where some of those things kind of kick up a bit more when you're on tour and you're just playing these grueling shows and you one after the other, and just trying to stay up and maintain that level for every show. Did you find that was different on the road for you?
No. I'm so jacked up to play every concert. By the time I hit the stage, like Jake Klein once wrote about me, Pete Rose plays every show like he's at the Orange Bowl. And that is how I'm going to play every show, like I'm at the Orange Bowl. I don't need drugs or alcohol, or if I could be not sleep for 5 days. I hit the stage, I'm going crazy. Spike and I had a band with the singer of the Chicago band Life Sentence, this guy Ray, from this band Life Sentence that was kind of big from Chicago, and he came to South Florida. We were jamming with him. We were playing in this people's house one night, practicing with small amps, could barely hear. We're just going along, and he just stops. He's like, "What the heck are you guys doing?" He's like, "I don't care if you got the smallest amp and the worst guitar in the world and nobody's here. Every time you play like it's the last time you're ever going to play. Every time you hit the stage, you play like it's the last stage you're ever going to hit. Like your life depends on it. Like everything depends on it." And he was so jacked and so pumped and so into it. And I was just like, yes, he's right. That is how you have to approach every show, every time. every time. And since then, every time I hit the stage, I played Keeps, and that's it. And he inspired it in me. He brought it out of me. And I think Spike holds that true also. Spike will tell you the same thing, that he approaches it the same way. I'm ready. I'm ready every time.
I think I read that somewhere where someone said about you how when you do play live, you play as if every show was sold out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to, because if there's still 5 people there, they still want to see it. They still want to bring it, and that's
right.
I just don't know how any other way. I just don't know any other way. And I get nervous when there's only like 2 or 3 people out there, because I know I'm still going to go nuts and it might look foolish. So if I have like a stadium full of people, I am not nervous. People get nervous in front of big crowds. I'm the opposite. I get nervous in front of small crowds. I like a big crowd. I need that. I'm like, yeah.
I think also kind of thinking about some of the more later bands that came around, maybe like early 2000s, there was a band that you were, I think maybe you get credit for putting together or helping form. Was it Betsy Ross? Is that a band you remember kind of working with at that time?
Oh yeah, that was me and Jessica's band. Again, I was kind of like a scene dad. I was driving like lots of people to concerts. I was taking everybody and all their friends, or everyone to go. Okay, everybody hop in, let's go. And so I had a friend, and their little friend Jessica, she was just like the 16, 17-year-old girl. She's in the backseat of the car, and she starts rapping, and she was like really good. I mean, she was this little cute white girl, but she had flow, and she had a good voice and style. I was like, I'm like, man, she's so good, actually. I'm like, she should be in a band with this girl right here. And so the more I hung out with her personality, and she was very shy, but she was so keen musically. I was like, you want to try rapping in a band or doing that over a microphone? And she's like, yeah, okay. And so sure enough, she was able to do it. And we started writing songs and playing shows. We played the Culture Room. We had Chris on bass, this girl Chris, my friend, on bass. She was playing, and we had Spike on drums for a while. And I was running this nightclub Orbit in Boynton Beach, and we actually opened up for Nonpoint there. And there's like almost 1,000 people there. And we were playing the show, and she was really good. And then I was writing her lyrics for her and telling her what to sing, and she was doing good. And then I said, I want you to write your own lyrics and your own like song. Here's the music, you do it. And what she came up and threw down was incredible. I was like, that's incredible. I never would have thought of that. No one would have thought of that. I'm like, that's so from left field and so good. But like, all the other epic failures in my life, it just slipped through my fingers, and we stopped the band, even though we were doing very well and she had talent. But yeah, so yeah, that was a thing. And the Betsy Ross idea the name was my idea, because I tried to turn everything political. She was just a teenage girl. She didn't care about politics.
Right.
But yeah, so that was a thing. Betsy Ross, another thing slipping through my fingers.
You mentioned a band like Nonpoint, who, although they had some member changes over the years, Rob and Elias have been with the band for the longest time, especially Rob. What are your memories of seeing Nonpoint and watching their career grow? And they're still at it to this very day, still making new music.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't be happier. Proud. They were such nice guys. We had, like I said, when I managed that club Orbit, we did their video shoot there. I wasn't really friends with them, even though we played shows with them and went to their shows and I liked them. We weren't tight, but I still wanted to help them. So when I ran Orbit, I was like, hey, let's do your video shoot here and everything. And it was great. They were great guys. I think they're a great band, and I love their success and the fact that they're still going. I'll be honest, when we first started and, Clap Signals were our height and they were doing their thing, I didn't think they would make it to how they've made it and would be around this long, and the fact that they did, and they're so good, it's just like, they represent South Florida, man. I mean, it's great. Them and Puya, another great South Florida band, likewise, that, stuck it out for the long run and did great things. I'm impressed. I love it. I'm nothing but happy for them. It's great.
Yeah. There were other bands kind of who always would play those shows, Gone Mad, Endo, Groovenix. Any other memories?
Yeah, absolutely. I was friends with all of them. Great kids, Pete Carmichael, great dude, great times with them. Gone Mad, again, you had JC in that band. Oh my gosh, that guy was an animal. Again, fueling the scene. He was someone else that was like fueling the scene, making everybody better with his fire. you know, Rape Date with JP, who is now, you know, JP Soares with his blues thing. I mean, JP Soares from South Florida. I mean, he's almost reached iconic level in a way. He's winning blues awards, national awards. I mean, everybody knows who he is. He, you know, I'm good friends with him. I love him. He is one of my favorite musicians from South Florida, one of my favorite guitarists. You know, I always wanted to be in a band and jam with him, but he's too smart to be in a band with me. But, you know, I love the guy. And so, yeah, JC, JP, yeah, good West Palm Beach people, man, definitely. True musicians, you know,
Yeah.
grinding it, working it, dedicated, 100%.
Were you getting a lot of support back then from some of the radio stations that were around, whether it be Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, Miami? Was there any support for a lot of the bands you were with at that time, or what was that like?
Only KPX, the local radio station from Piper High, which was like, you know, and the next was in Lauderdale, which was right next to Tamarack. So they were like our next high school over. KPX played Collapsing Lungs and Radio-Baghdad nonstop, you know, and so we owe them a lot. We were live on the air with them at the time. I don't even know if that was allowed, but Jason Morgan had us on the air with them. So yeah, KPX treated us great. Another big influence from South Florida would have been WLRN 91.3 in the early 80s. Public radio, Bob Slade had his Off the Beaten Path show, and he would play punk. I think it was every Monday or Sunday night at midnight or something. And he would just play the best in punk for like 2 hours. And I mean, if that show was one of the biggest influences of my life, I don't know what was, you know. My friend John Summerlade, Richard Shelter, and he shows at the Cameo Theater, Bob Slade, WLRN. These are three of the biggest, you know, influences of my life. And Bob Slade's show is incredible. And Spike would call up and win tickets to the shows at the Cameo Theater every week. It's like he had a psychic connection to that show. He'd always win tickets and everything. And Bob Slade had me and John Kennedy on when we did the Nuclear Beer BGK show at the Tamarack Rec Hall to promote the show. He had us on air. We're like 15, 16 years old, and we're live on the radio doing interviews about a concert that we're putting on. I mean, I don't know if that happens anymore these days.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that is, you know, those memories I'm sure are really nice. But yeah, you're right. There weren't a lot of stations. I think Zeta had their Goes Local was, I remember hearing bands like the Goods the first time on Zeta Goes Local. So any memories of that show? And was there any reason why a band like Collapsing Lungs may not have been on a show like that?
I remember the show and I remember listening to it, but I don't remember if they ever played us or not. I don't think they did. I think we came around and got big at the end of that show, maybe. And I think we might have been a little too off to the left for them to play it, you know, maybe a little too hard at the time or something. So I don't remember that we were on that show, but I remember Atlantic Records said we were the hardest band they had ever signed at that point.
Yeah.
So maybe because of that, but yeah.
And, you know, Atlantic Records known for so much music going back, you know, jazz and soul, R&B, and also a lot of other.
You got Led Zeppelin,
Led Zeppelin,
AC/DC, Rat, I mean, Twisted Sister, all of the biggest bands were Atlantic Records. And the funny thing is, at the time when we were doing the Collapsing Lungs tour, like we played with Dee Snider's Widowmaker band in New Jersey, and Dee Snider was like, "Why are you signing with Atlantic Records? They ripped off AC/DC, they ripped off Rat, they ripped us off, they ripped everybody off. Get off of there. You don't want to be with them." And we're like, "Oh my God, what did we do?" And Dee Snider was a great guy, actually. That guy was amazing. I love that guy. He was so nice to us, and like he played us on his radio show. We were number one on his radio show in New York for 7 weeks. And when we met him and played with him, he was a great guy and everything.
Were you aware? Were you aware of how instrumental he was back in I think it was like the mid 80s during the whole censorship thing that was going on, you know, him, Zappa, even like John Denver, and how they were advocating to not censor. What do you remember of that?
Yeah, I remember they were coming after Judas Priest and everything and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, Tipper Gore and everything. She was like public enemy number one. Unbelievable that Al Gore would be so wonderful later. But yeah, I remember all that. And I remember just been thinking, this is so silly. This is just going to pass over and just look ridiculous in the future. And it was. And I remember at the time, for some reason, I thought John Denver was on the other side. I was mad at John Denver. I'm like, why does he want to censor? And then I found out like no, John Denver was on the non-censor side. It was on our side. So I actually was misinformed myself a lot. But I remember, I just thought it was so silly. I knew it would end up, working in rock and roll's favor, because rock and roll always wins.
I think the only record you had put out that has the parental advisory label on it was the Collapsing Lungs EP.
Yeah, we put out a record, just had that as the cover, because you put that, and it sold more records when you put that on. If you make something taboo, people want it more.
Right.
That's just life.
Especially at that time. Now everything has like been done a million times, but back then, maybe not as much.
Yeah.
So another band you were in a little bit later on, and was Red State Riot, was that formed in Georgia, or was that Florida?
No, we were in South Florida. I was managing the club Orbit in Boynton Beach at the time, and putting on all the concerts there, Dead Kennedys, Slayer, Rat, Judas Priest, Crystal Method. I was putting all those concerts on, running that club. And Betsy Ross and me, we just kind of drifted apart a little bit, and I wanted to get another political band going. So I just have to have a political outlet. I'm just a loudmouth, political kind of guy. It's just who I am. And so, I just formed another band with the drummer. He was working next door. Dean was working next door at the head shop, at the bong shop. I'd go in there and I'd look at him, I go, "You're a drummer, aren't you?" I could tell by his arms he was a drummer. I mean, I just knew. He's like, "Yeah, I'm a drummer, of course." I'm like, "Dude, let's start a band." And so we started a band with my friend Pete, Pete Lloyd, James Pete, the guy. And yeah, we put out a record ourselves. We went on a US tour, which was pretty grueling. And we went on a European tour, which was pretty awesome. And then again, just, slipped through my fingers. But that was my little political outlet band there for a little while at the early 2000s, in response to the Bush administration, which looks tame in comparison to what's going on in the world today, doesn't it?
I definitely like that album. I haven't had a chance to get to hear the entire thing. It's hard to track down the whole record, but it was definitely
sending you.
And I appreciate that, my friend. And because it was definitely more thrash sound to me, to my ears, than some of the other stuff you would put out. So I really do like that that direction that you went in with that record, more thrash punk. What happened with that band? Did you just kind of run its course, or what?
Me and Pete had trouble keeping drummers, and we had Steve, who did, my good friend Steve still, Manis, who I love, who did the European tour with. But yeah, it was hard for me to keep anything together at that time, because I was, working at the club, and I was practically homeless, even though I was running that huge nightclub and it was making an absurd amount of money on some evenings. I was still homeless at the time and living in the back of the club and living in places that you can't be living really. And so it was hard to keep anything together at the time, let alone put a record out and tour when you're homeless, unless you're DRI, and you're a magician. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
So I had to get my own, stuff together. So sometimes that takes. I wrote that Red State Riot album basically while I was homeless on just a electric guitar without being able to plug into anything. So, and you could barely hear it. So you're playing an electric guitar, not plugged into anything, and you have nothing to record or write anything down with. So that album is a reflection of my anger at the time against society. It doesn't get more real or raw than that.
It definitely does sound like a more aggressive album than some of them.
It's very simple. It's very primordial, and it's when you can't. I couldn't even like now. I'm in a stable. I have my own home, and I'm stable, and I have Logic, so I can harmonize and make melodies, and I can layer tracks, and I can really write things. At that time, you can't even play with another bass player, so you're just playing like one thing and trying to figure out.
Did you do any other bands after that, or was that kind of the last one up until the new project you got right now?
I did a rap thing with Pete Jizzle, which people didn't understand why the hell I was doing. And I actually did some rap shows, some very hardcore rap shows, like at Churchill's and in Atlanta, that were very ballsy for me to actually do. But the only reason I was really doing that was to figure out how to use the Logic program so I can do programming for Collapsing Lungs or, my other punk projects, because, we got Collapsing Lungs back together right now, and I got Anti-Terror League, and I just wanted to learn to use Logic really well, the computer program, because I had never been privy to such technology in the music world before. And all of a sudden I have my own computer now, and I got Logic, and I got my amps and my guitars in my studio now, so I can really delve into it. So doing the rap thing was just a fun way to learn, again, how to program on Logic and just to play live and just to be silly. I was playing these hardcore rap shows at Churchill's in a light up outfit with like lights on me and a red, yellow, and green like onesie jumpsuit, singing songs about smoking weed, where there were like other real hardcore hood rappers there on it after me. So,
yeah.
So it was again, I'm a crazy individual that does insane things. And so I did that for a while, but that was just to learn Logic again. Now I'm adept in Logic. And so I'm writing songs again for Collapsing Lungs and for my new project, Anti-Terror League, which I cannot really confirm that I am in or out of because of certain governmental agencies and or groups that may wish to target the band for their dangerousness.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. A couple of things I wanted to unpack real quick. One, it was the whole rap thing. Are you known to freestyle at all? Could you offer anything during the interview? You can. Okay.
No. I can write incredible raps. And in fact, I wrote 2 lines that had 24 rhymes in it, 12 in each line. 12 words that rhymed with 12 words.
Yeah.
And my mom was a writer, so I'm a great writer and lyricist, but freestyle, no. My friend Gabe can freestyle, but I can't freestyle. That people who can do that, they're like Eddie Van Halen to me. When you can freestyle really fast like that, that's like Eddie Van Halen level stuff. That's very hard to do. You've got to practice for a long time, be very skilled to do that. So any rap musician that could freestyle like that just blows me away. And I still don't believe there is such thing as freestyle. I think they wrote it and practiced it.
Okay. What were your thoughts on Dee Dee Ramone's hip hop record he put out?
Oh man, I don't know if that was a hip hop record or what that was, but like when Dee Dee left the Ramones and did that, I was like, I don't even want to say it, but I knew he wasn't long for this earth, because I had seen him in concert. I'd stood right in front of him when the Ramones played the Button South in like '83. I was at their show, and he was so jacked up and playing so hard. It was so awesome. And then and I was so close to his face, and then to see him a few years later in that, and I saw how he looked and what he was doing, and hearing all the things in the media, I was like, oh boy, Dee Dee. So yeah. But actually, it's still kind of cool. Looking back on it now, like, that was actually kind of cool.
Yeah. I
had Joey Ramone's orange peel in my freezer for like 7 years. He threw his orange peel on the stage and I grabbed it and I saved it. I had Joey Ramone's DNA in my freezer for 7 years. And then it got thrown away accidentally. I'm so angry because I was going to clone Joey. I was going to have a Joey Ramone clone. Do you understand? Again, these things slip through my fingers.
Yeah. That seems to be a reoccurring theme. But one thing that seems to have not slipped through that has kind of come back was the kind of reuniting in a way of Collapsing Lungs. How did that kind of come about, especially after some of the, maybe tension you may have had on some of those tours and stuff? How did that kind of come about and kind of getting back together?
Yeah, well, after I left Collapsing Lungs, there was no hard feelings really between anybody. It was just a horrible thing that happened. We're all still friends, and I always wanted to get it back together again. It was the biggest regret of my life. I mean, I won't lie to you and say that every single day of my life I regret that decision, because it's true. My life's been haunted by that decision every day. I mean, when I'm at work or I'm doing this or that, almost every minute I'm thinking about that still. It's like I'm insane. I can't escape it. And I've expressed this to like Brian and Chris, Spikey, and then told them this. And they're like, dude, it wasn't your fault, man. That wasn't your fault. But I know it was my fault. And as nice as they all are to try not to hurt my psyche more by telling me it wasn't my fault, I know it was, and it kills me. And so I always wanted to get back together. And then I released a video, this thing called Vom Doc. It was just me doing my industrial stuff, showing off my skills that I had acquired in Logic, So I did this video, and Brian and Chris, from Collapsing Lungs saw it on Facebook. And I'm like, dude, you're killing it. That's really good. I'm like, well, let's get this back together again. Or they were like, you want to get back together again? And I was like, yes, absolutely, I want to. And so we're making music again. Some of the original members aren't there. I wish they were, for whatever reason. It's still a work in progress, still might happen, but we got, me and Brian and Chris and Lloyd, and we're working really hard, writing new songs. We actually have about 2 or 3 albums worth of material, incredible material written. We just have to, and recorded and written and ready to go. It just, with the pandemic, you can't, it has been hard to like book a concert or anything. So we're trying to figure out what is the best way to proceed forward. Brian and Chris are in Florida, I'm in Georgia, and Lloyd is in Rotterdam. But we're still writing remotely, and releasing videos. And like I said, we have like 2 or 3 albums worth of incredible music. And, Lloyd is mixing our stuff into a whole new sound now. So we're just figuring out how we're going to get, back out there live or release this stuff at this point. But at this point, we're like a loaded gun, like 2 loaded guns ready to fire, So
how would you
trickling out some videos, but it's slowly coming.
How would you describe the sound? Because it's been so many years since we've heard any new Collapsing Lungs music. So how would you describe what the sound is even like in 2022?
Well, when Brian first approached me about doing it again, I was hoping Brian would have mellowed out and wanted to do like a bunch of first wave kind of stuff, mostly keyboard heavy stuff. I was like, all ready to not even play guitar anymore and just show off my keyboard skills and all that stuff. But Brian wasn't having it. Brian is angry at what's going on in the world today, as he should be, and he has things to say about the state of the world today, and he wants it hard and in your face and pumped up. And so, the songs are almost, my guitar style hasn't changed. It's still very tight, very crunchy, very rhythmic, very, my whole thing is I make music that makes people want to get pumped up. I want to make people mosh, man. I don't care if it brings me money or this or that. I have one sole thing in mind, and that's to pump people up and make them rebel, make them mosh, make them go crazy. That's why I'm here on this planet, okay? It's not about me. It's about me making people go crazy for whatever reason they have to go crazy for. And so for me, the guitar parts are still the same, and Brian is still, but now Lloyd, what he's mixing our sound into a whole new modern sound, a whole new modern sound that we could never get before without him. That's just right in there with all the crazy new bands like Bring Me the Horizon and all these crazy new metal bands, bands. So Lloyd is taking our Collapsing Lungs sound that was always there, and now he's morphing it into this whole new crazy world. So it's going to be just bigger and newer and modern and very insane.
Nice. Looking forward to hearing some of the music whenever it makes its re-debut, so to speak. So next
video we put out, we'll have the new sound. Next video.
And you just did a video too for Anti-Terror League. So talk about that project for a little bit and that video, because I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing it. So, talk about that a little bit and what should we expect from that project?
Well, Anti-Terror League, I cannot confirm that I am in the band actually or associated with it in any ways or speak for them, but I will speak for them. And again, it's a very angry political band. If you don't like politics in your music, it's not going to be for you, because this is the band that's going on the attack. I mean, everybody is mentally down in this insane world right now. Everybody feels beat down and defeated. No. This is when we come out swinging. This is when we come out swinging back. We're going to fight for everything. These things that we're fighting for, the Anti-Terror League, shouldn't even be topics anymore in this day and age. I don't even know why they are. I mean, we support the LGBTQ communities. We're against homophobia. We support the BLM community. We're against racism. We're against fossil fuels. We're against animal cruelty. You got to stop eating meat and start eating more vegetarian ways, people. You got to stop the oil pipelines. There's a lot of issues going on today that are just crazy. And we're not just going to sit back and just feel defeated by them all. We're going to fight every single topic we have. We're going to scream about, we're going to fight about, we're going to get pumped up about. We're not going to take no crap from these governors, these politicians that want to throw their fascism and their authoritarian ways and silence people and cancel people. No, we're not having it. We're not laying down. We're here to pump people up and get them back up. We're not afraid to say exactly what we want and get out there. This is going to be good old parking lot Nazi beatdowns like the old days.
Definitely had a more aggressive sound and a lot of, like you said, more of a political message. Was this the first time that you have worked with Les Norris in a musical project? I know I saw him in the video. How much? I mean, how long has that been since you all worked together?
I can't confirm that that is Les Norris matter in the video. Okay. Again, he cannot be confirmed as an official member of this entity. But I know that Lester has been very affected by the world's goings on lately, and his anger and political leanings need to come out as well. You know, we might be old, but these punks aren't going to go without having our last say. We're still fighting, okay? We're still fighting. We're still here. We're not going away, and we're still going to have our say before we drop dead. We're going to have our say. We're going to scream it. So you're going to be listening or you're not going to be listening, but we're going to be jacking it out there.
Nice. Nice. Well, it's been wonderful having you on this afternoon to chat about the long career you've had and your musical journey, and still more to come. Doesn't sound like you're stopping anytime soon. Sounds like you're just, to me, it sounds like you're just getting started.
Dude, I am just getting started. On my deathbed, I will not be defeated. I will look back as having won this fucking battle with the music world, okay? We're never gonna stop. We're always gonna keep doing it. We're gonna do it for the people. We're gonna keep on rocking and keep on thrashing, and watch. It's about to start pumping out faster than ever now.
It's great.
And I thank you very much for having me on. You're a crazy man for let me speak to the people out there. You know, you're the first person that let me speak to the people out there, and hopefully no one else will ever let me open my mouth again. Wait, well, no. Reverse that.
Right. Well, it's important.
Bad doggy treat for me.
It's important to document everyone's story, and at least, you know, for me, that's the whole essence of this podcast. And I'm so, again, honored to have you on, and you share these stories and your history with us, and the places and the people, and it's just so important, I feel like, to have that documented before it's too late. And we can't, and we can't. There's a lot of people I've wanted to interview who have passed on, and now I can't. So the fact that we've had a chance to chat today is super awesome. I'm going to kind of let you close out the interview. Anything you want to share to any of your supporters, fans, anyone that you kind of want to just wrap things up with? I'm going to let you kind of close out the interview.
Yeah. Everyone in South Florida that ever supported me, ever came to one of my shows, smoshed or screamed anytime I was on stage, I want to thank you so much. And I want you to know, South Florida, that I really am sorry for what happened with Collapsing Lungs. I feel like I really disappointed the whole community and the whole South Florida scene. I put all that squarely on myself. But I want to thank all of you for the continued support, and just sorry about that. And thank you so much for all the wonderful times. Our little fishbowl of South Florida that we lived in, we were in a fishbowl down there together. And I just love everybody down there so much. And just thank you and thank everybody so much. I really appreciate it for rocking out with me. Thank you.